I get in trouble, boy.
Are we on? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. I praise Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I ask Allah to raise the rank and the status of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his pure family, his noble companions, and all of those who follow them in righteousness into the day of judgment. Could you please put all the screens for all of us, inshallah? Barakallahu feekum. Uh, Welcome to another episode of the Black Imams Roundtable with our beloved Imams, Imam Luqman Ahmad, Imam Faheem Lee, and Imam Naeem Abdullah, who will be joining us shortly as it is Maghrib time in his area, so he comes a little late. And inshallah, we want to have regular discussions with our community and encourage you to engage with us as we tackle topics that many people are not used to talking about, but we believe that these topics are essential, especially in the Black African American community. And I'm going to use both terms because I noticed some people have been attacking us for using the term Black, and they want African American, and some want Negro, and some want. I can't make everybody happy, so I'll slice it all up, right? Black, African American, whatever you want, term you choose to use to discuss us, this descendants of former slaves from Africa, whatever you want, term you like. You know who I'm talking about. Us black people, us black folk, right? They used to say back in your day, Imam Luqman, us black folk,
The black
right?
folks. They
Uh,
probably come last.
so, inshallah, tonight's topic is going to be a very detailed, touchy subject, but I think it's a subject that we all are faced with and we want to deal with it. As we are imams, we are leaders, all of us are giving guidance to communities in the inner city. So we must tackle the issues that are confronted with in the inner city. And one of them is the issue of sectarianism and Sufism, and, you know, Salafiyah, Wahhabiyah, following a madhab, all of these things. So, inshallah, tonight's discussion is going to center around these issues. And remember, we are all people, we love each other. We may even disagree in some issues, but we're going to have a real heart to heart, honest conversation and facilitate to show others how you should have these conversations when you interact with each other. So, we're going to open it up with Imam Luqman as our elder and show respect, which we need in our communities. That he's our senior Imam, he's our elder, and even if he was only 1 year and he's many years older than us, we're going to give different. We're going to defer to his senior age in Islam and show that respect and let him begin this conversation. However, so we'll give Imam Luqman 10 minutes to start us off and guide the conversation, inshallah, however he wishes to go about it.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I appreciate that. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. Okay, here's the thing, and I'm going to try to lay it out as concisely as possible. My position, and I think is a good position for Black American Muslims to have on the whole issue of sectarianism. Okay. So when you have the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ فَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاتَّقُونَ فَتَقَطَّعُوا أَمْرَهُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ زُبُرًا كُلُّ حِزْبٍ بِمَا لَدَيْهِمْ فَرِحُونَ. Allah says, really, this ummah, and here in this verse, ummah means actually sharia. This sharia of yours is one sharia, one law, and I'm your Lord, therefore fear me. But then she said, فَتَقَطَّعُوا أمرهم بينهم زبرا, but they separated their affairs into factions. كل حزب بما لديهم فرحون. Now, I'm not going to so much go into the hadith about the 73 different sects that we have in Islam, or the hadith of the Prophet about that. And when I studied with Sheikh bin Baz, he went over that one night, and he gave what I thought was a very good explanation, that the actual sect that's not really considered the sect is the person who doesn't really consider his sect, his sectarianism, bigger than the Islam, bigger than the whole of his Islam. For example, uh, like like I told you earlier, that I had took the Shadli Tariqa, and a lot of people don't know that, but that's nothing. And I'm also Shafi'i, and I'm a strict Shafi'i in law. And maybe I might take another opinion, but I pretty much follow Shafi'i law in most of what I do for my salat and my amalat and even family issues. But however, Islam is greater to me than that. It's greater that it means more to me than any part of any sectarianism. Now, for Black American Muslims, and this is a theory of mine, but I think it's a sound theory. Number one, yes, we're Black Americans, but here's the thing: we are Americans. We were born and raised in the United States, and even though we come out of slavery and Jim Crow and racism and institutionalized racism, and we have issues that are particular to us in our neighborhoods, particularly, and really when you talk about the inner city, okay, we're last in every social economic category that defines well-being, so on and so forth. But still, we are still part of Americana, meaning our thinking and our way of taking in information and events is still pretty much American. And the thing about America, and one of the things that made this country great, and I do think it's a great country despite its ills, is that we will take anything from anywhere, from any country, any culture, whether it's Chinese culture, Asian culture, African culture, European culture, sub-European, Italian, Mexican. We will take it and we will Americanize it with the quickness. We will take it. We will take what we like it from it. Okay, we like this. We like this. We like this. But we're not going to take that, and that because that don't work for us. And that's how we have thrived as Americans. That's why when we bring in immigrants, we bring people from all over the world and say, "Hey, what do you like? What do you got to offer?" Now, I think that as Muslim Americans, particularly as Muslim imams in leadership, that we have to be on guard in the same fashion when Islamic ideology comes across our borders and start to gain adherence, or especially when it's kind of forced upon us or when it's put upon us, like, okay, we're going to tell you as Black American converts to Islam in the United States of America, which is uncharted territory for everybody. Anybody that comes to America from outside of this country is uncharted territory for them. But it's not uncharted territory for us. We've been here for 400 years. We have fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers, great-great-great-great-grandfathers. We have narratives that we have passed down since slavery time. We have narratives that we've passed down since Islam, since the first Muslims came in, whether they were Sunni Muslim, whether they were a Moorish science temple, whether it was a nation of Islam, which there's questions about, their Islam. But no matter what, we still have these narrations. They are still intact. These stories are still intact. So I'm coming from the standpoint that the best Islam for Black American Muslim converts, because we are converts to Islam. We were people of Jahiliyyah, and we heard the message of Islam, and we accepted Islam. And that the best possible Islam for us is the Islam of the Prophet ﷺ, without any additions, without any new names, without any isms, even without the madahib, the basics of the deen. Now, if we take from the madahib, if we take from Sufism, if we take from, I'm not going to say modern day Salafism because that's kind of old and new, because what people consider to be modern day Salafism It's a nuanced type of Salafism. There was never no such thing as Salafism. There's the minhaj of the Salaf al-Salih, but that had to do, to my minhaj, that had to do with methodology by which you arrive at your decision. It had nothing to do with this is the fiqh of the Salaf. No, it was no such thing as the Salafi fiqh. You had different types of Salafis. You had Salafis from Hijaz, people of the Salaf. You talk about 180 years of history, like 180 years from the death of the Prophet ﷺ to the death of the last of the tabi'in, which was Khalf ibn Abi Khalifa, and that was about in the 185 or 186 year of the Hijrah. So you're talking 185 years of, or like 170 so and so years of scholarship, and you had people of the Salaf period. You have people from Hijaz, you have people from Kufa, you have people from Basra, you have people from Samarkand, you have people from Egypt. So you had different ways of looking at things, but the methodology was the accepted methodology by which you. So that's one thing over there. So I think that we have reached the level. I believe that Black American Muslims, we have served our time, man. We've served our time in the Deen. We served our time in the struggle. We're still struggling as Black Americans with racism and all kind of crevices about that. Then we have racism in Muslim America. I don't think anybody outside of this country is qualified. I don't think that they're qualified in terms of scholarship, in terms of like a certitude. Not to say anything bad about the scholars; they're scholars, but we are on unheralded territory. So this is a scholar coming into America, whether he's a Sufi sheikh, whether he's a Salafi sheikh, whether he's a Madhabi sheikh, whoever he is. I question their um, I I question their qualification at leading Black Americans in a land that they take the average time for a scholar to be in the United States of America before they really understand our cultural nuance. And that's if they studied our history. That's if they were dealing with blacks anyway. If they were dealing with whites, if they're dealing with Americans, most scholars who come, they remain in their own enclave, in their own community, or they may go in academia, which is limited for them. And also, they're paid. And so, what they can study, what they can espouse upon is limited based upon who's paying that salary, who's paying for that endowment, who's paying for that research. Nobody's paying people to research Black American lives in our in our history as Muslims, and we don't even study that ourselves. So I think that we just come to a point where whether it's Salafi, whether it's Sufi, hey, we can take what we need. We need, okay, I can use this, I can use that. Oh, that right there. No, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that. We ain't doing, especially if it's not the Sunnah. No, we're not doing that. No, the added stuff. No, we don't, because my experience dealing with Muslims coming into different sects. I'm not putting anybody down. I'm just saying that what I've seen work the best as far as generational continuity, meaning you being Muslim, your kids being Muslim, your grandkids being Muslim, your great kid. What I've seen work the best was the basic Islam of the Prophet ﷺ, the 5 pillars, 7 beliefs, zakat. You can take the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, or you can say take Riyadh al-Salihin, and you can build a civilization on that. So every sect that has come from abroad, every ideological nuance that has come, from abroad, it also included a hierarchy that was non-black. It was someone else, usually someone overseas, that in your organization, that person has a permanent hierarchy over you. That person is supposed to understand the deen better than you. That person is supposed to understand what you should do in your life better than you. And that just supports the whole idea of white supremacy or Arab supremacy or scholarly supremacy over Black Americans. And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit, in our own. I think we have more than enough knowledge, more than enough trained imams, more than enough. We have a surplus of trained imams, trained scholars who could deal with just about any issue that we come up. If it's some kind of particular fiqh issue, for example, because it's just the law. So I don't think our adherence to different sectarian ideology, I don't think it served us well because we come from the hood and we come from the gang, man. I come from Philly with cats fighting over corners, man. They fighting over the corner that they don't even own. Where you from? I'm from 20th Norris. I'm from back Hain Street. Man, I'm from Brickyard. I used to live back what they call the jungle, man. Where I lived, the jungle. I mean, I was cool with the different gangs, not all of them, but some of them, because we were Muslim, and we held our own, and so we were kind of different. They're the Muslim boys, so we go across it, and I just wouldn't just go across because I gotten some scrape, but we come from that. Now we come from the Crips and the Blood. We come from this stuff. So when we get this sectarianism, when we pick up these things, not that there's benefit from Sufism, definitely as a spiritual path for someone to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you got to keep in mind that Sufi sects were started by individual men. They were started by men. They were men just like us. They were men. And that's why some of these sects are named after them. Now, like I said, I had got affiliated with the Shadili. I was started by Abu Hassan al-Shadili. Great scholar. I benefited from it. But I'm not like a card carrying Sufi. No, I'm not. And because it limits us. You got to keep in mind, and I'm going to finish with this. Black American Muslims, they were invited to Islam by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala personally. He personally made it in his qadr, made his decision that I want black ex-slaves who were brought to America. I want a bunch of them to become Muslim. Whole bunch. Here. That one. I want to reconnect them. Many of them were Muslims before. I'm going to reconnect them, but they're still cut off from anything that before. I believe, brothers, that black American Muslims, converts to Islam, and their families and their lineage, it constitutes an entirely new Muslim civilization. And if we look at it that way, then we're not beholden to any of the sectarian tendencies. We can take what we want and we can leave what we want. That's our right. That's part of being American. That's what we do. You come here, you're Italian, you got pizza, man. We put some pineapples on that pizza. We put some hot dogs on that pizza, and we got pizza with hot dogs. Man, I'm gonna tell you one story real quick. I studied in Sudan, so I love food. Food madamas. I mean, what I'm talking about, right? Too, Dane, right? Food, put some giblet on that bad boy, put some olive oil on it, some onions. That's the thing. Some pita bread, boom. So one day I had some brothers over my house, man. Said, I can make out some food, right? So I made the food. I'm trying to get the dude say, listen, man, he put that stuff in a bowl, cut some hot dogs in that joint, man, and put some regular American cheese on that bad boy, heat it up, and he was grubbing. I'm like, that's not how you're supposed to eat it. I said, that's not how you're supposed to eat it, bro. He said, that's how I eat it. It's just food. And so I just think that we do ourselves a disservice when not so much accepting any, especially talk about Sufism, because there's benefits, but also there's harms in it too. Because you're talking about another 100 sects, whether it's Shadili, Qadri, Tijani, Chishti. You got so many different ones. And I think for the average black American Muslim who converts to Islam, or white American, or Latino American, that the best Islam for them is the Islam that they converted to in the first place. That's my position. That's my final answer on that one. I don't want to take up no more time, Sheikh, but I just wanted to put that out there. And
MashaAllah, Imam Luqman cut his own conversation. Alhamdulillah, right?
No,
but I want to state something because y'all might not be able to see the comments unless you're on your phone and got it silent. You can see the comments. What I ask of everyone, there's two things that we want to accomplish here. So I just need everyone to follow. Number one, we want to have the discussion. Number two, we want to be respectful of each other. One of the things that we have in our communities, I think we all agree, nobody listens to nobody else. This is the way I feel. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say. If you ain't saying exactly what I want to hear, heck with you, which is a big problem in our community.
Right.
We can't even learn how to disagree. So one of the things we're going to learn to do tonight is we're going to learn to listen, we're going to learn to
Right.
be patient, and we're going to learn to disagree, solve our disagreements, and remain brothers and keep going forward. Even when we don't solve our disagreements, we're going to learn to work through that, right? And this is one thing as leaders, we have the obligation to teach others. So uh, I'm asking the listeners and the Facebook scholars and editors and muhakkikun and right, just be patient. So inshallah, barakallahu bikum, Imam Faheem, your turn.
Assalamu alaikum Abdullah.
Alex.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Okay, again, Imam Amin, thank you for having me on this discussion. Thank you for all of the listeners who've taken their time out to join us, and to my fellow Imams, Imam Naeem, Imam Luqman. Thank you for allowing me to be a stowaway on this thing, man. You know, inshallah. All right, so we're talking about sectarianism, right? Is that what the question, Imam?
Yeah, so you're not a senior, so you only get like 6 minutes to address it. Right?
Okay, so
Now, your opening statement in terms of the issue of sectarianism, how you see it, Sufism, Salafi, Madhabi, Shafi'i, Hanbali, this issue that we're confronted with and how we should address these things in our community.
probably the most important thing in my view is that we have to understand what sectarianism is and what it isn't, and we have to look at what falls under the broader scope of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And when we examine it from that avenue, we find that all of these things that are considered sects and that's been promoted as sects over the years is not really sectarianism. Ahlul Sunnah, our methodology is very clear. We're Ashari, Maturidi, we follow a madhab, and we follow a tariqah for the most part, inshallah ta'ala. And you'll find the sectarianism came in is when people departed from that. When people started saying they didn't follow those two schools of Aqidah, or they didn't, what's been popular in the last, 20 or 30 years or so, that you don't have to follow a madhab. You just have to follow Quran and Sunnah. And, and we won't even discuss about tasawwuf, because that has been blackballed, throughout our existence, that, people think it's some type of, something totally different, from Ahlul Sunnah. So once we identify that, then we understand what sectarianism is. And anything that opposes this is sectarianism. And the sectarianism has had the voice in our community, for the most part, for the last couple of decades. And, we are in a battle right now to, undo some of that stuff and deprogram a lot of these people who don't even understand what being part of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is. It's the people of the Sunnah and the majority. We've been bombarded with slogans like, the majority of Muslims are mushriks, the majority of Muslims are upon bid'ah, the majority of Muslims around the world are astray, except for this few group of people and these, seven or so scholars that's in this region, and those that they follow, they're the ones that got the right Islam, and and this thing that with people who are affected by this, I think it's a psyche of our people. I think they think like, okay, if these Muslims in this part of the world, if they follow this brand of Islam, it must be right because they're in the Holy Lands, and it has the psyche that we have of inferiority, that we will succeed to, these people, and they're the ones that's the sects, If you are really studying the history, the sects are one of the identifying signs of a sect is that it has small numbers. It has small numbers. So the people who claim to follow the true way, more strict than anyone else, you know, they have the small numbers. You know, so we got to, really turn this around and really promote this thing of what Ahlul Sunnah, what Jama'at is, So it's not following the method. That's not a sect. Because you hear people say this out of ignorance. It's not following the tariqah. All of that is part of what Imam Amin has been mentioning in these post-Fajr reflections. We talking about Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Islam is the fiqh that you follow through the madhabs. Iman is Aqidah that you follow through the two schools. And Ihsan is the turuq, the following of the tariqas, And that's basically it, and we just got to get back to that, we've been bamboozled. We've been bamboozled again, and now we got to do a 20-year turnaround, inshallah ta'ala, and getting back to understanding what it means and what we have to do, and really just put that yoke that's been on our necks with sectarianism and people who have been promoting it. I think. Do I got more time?
Oh yeah. I mean, if this is your opening statement, if you finish.
Yeah. I think Imam Naeem is going to clean it up for me. So inshallah. So
right,
yeah, but
Imam Naeem, the discussion. So the opening discussion on this issue of, sectarianism between all the things that what we're talking about. So go ahead.
Alhamdulillah.
Since you older than Faheem, right? Imam Faheem?
I don't know.
No, I got age on him. Don't make me pour rank on you, Imam.
Oh man.
I don't mind being a young buck. Alhamdulillah.
I just wear young boy clothes.
Imam, but I thought he was a little older than you.
I think I got you too, Imam.
I don't know.
Man. I just don't really be revealing stuff, man.
That don't count if you're gonna be in the closet. Go ahead, Imam Naeem.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa afdalu salatu wa salam ala Sayyidil Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Man, I was listening to all of you, and alhamdulillah, I think Imam Faheem mentioned some of what I wanted to mention. But a lot of times I think it's good to give imagery, to draw a picture or paint a picture for the believers. And when we talk about Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, or the people of Sunnah wal Jama'ah, a lot of times the image that comes to my mind is a big umbrella. I picture a big umbrella. And that umbrella that's protecting you from the rain has in it, Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, in the schools, or the two schools that reached us from the time of the Salaf, the first three generations, that explain and break down and canaculize, if that's a word, how or what our Iman is the science of Aqidah, and it has been organized for us during the time of the Salaf, the first three generations, by two Imams, Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi and Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. Likewise, the outward practices of Islam have been organized and outlined and broken down and systematized for us also in that same time period of the Salaf by four Imams. And we know there were more than four Imams, but for the Imams of the four schools that reached us are the Imams who are well known: Imam Luqman bin Thabit, meaning Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ashafi, and Imam Ahmad. And also the Imams, or those who laid the foundation for our spiritual progression, because that's also included in the Hadith of Jibril under the rubric of Ihsan. Now it's been called Tasawwuf or Sufism or Ilmu Sir, and has been broken down and basically systematized by Abu Qasim al-Junayd al-Baghdadi. And so when I talk about Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, I see an umbrella with all of those schools in it. They already did it. the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had transmitted to his Sahaba transmitted to those who came after them, and they transmitted to those who came after them. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam certified these three generations when he said, "Khairu ummati qarni, thumma alladhina yalunahum, thumma alladhina yalunahum." That the best of my ummah, my community, is my generation, then the generation that follows them, and then the generation that follows them. Right? And so all of these things have been locked in and systematized and everything in those first three generations. And so again, I have this imagery in my mind of an umbrella. And so now you come after that point, you have to work because it's not a narrow umbrella, it's a big umbrella. There's a lot of room to wiggle in there, you know. And so you have to kind of go out your way to come from under that umbrella and get rained on by kufr, bid'ah, and shirk, right? They get caught by the deluge of this rain. Now, I think I want to drive the point home. I want to use as an analogy something that we all are experiencing right now. You don't have to be Muslim to appreciate this. You know, everyone is talking about Black Lives Matter, right? And so what you have happen a lot of times is that some people will come in and use the mantra, the slogan, and in this case, create an organization behind it, but yet that organization is completely opposite than what the mantra is. So now everyone say, yeah, Black Lives Matter, right? And then so now you look up Black Lives Matter, the organization started by white people. They care more about LGBT more than they care about Black lives. And so when you condemn Black Lives Matter, the common person is confused. Are you talking about black people don't matter? No, I'm talking about the organization. But the organization for black people. No, it's not for black people, right? And so you have the same thing that's happening in Islam. Everybody says they're Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. But then you have people that put on the clothing, the mantra of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but what they're really about has nothing to do with Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And so this is in the same way that we can trace Black Lives Matter, the organization, we can find out who funded it. We can point out the black people who are the face of it, but they don't have any control of it. We could do the same thing in Islam. We all have the claim with Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Well, when did you get started? Who funded you? And this is the part of the hard conversation we have to have. We agree, right? Okay, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay, you're Salafi, you're Wahhabi. When did you get started? How did you come about? And when you trace it back, you get led to the Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. You get traded to the Saud family, and that has an isnad back to the British. You don't go back to Muhammad Rasulullah. Likewise, if you go to the other extreme, we're Muslim, Nation of Islam. Okay, where did your Islam come from? Elijah Muhammad, Fard Muhammad. Fard Muhammad, where did he come from? Oh, I don't know. He came from a whole lot of places. He came from Mecca. He's an Ahmadiyya proselytizer. Oh, so your isnad goes back to the British too. Okay, right? And so historically, we can pinpoint these things, but why are we still having these problems? And one brother, he pointed it out to me, and I'll conclude on this, is that a lot of times we still have these problems because as individuals, we have emotional attachments to these group and these ideologies. So when I became Muslim, when I became Muslim, if I came in and all I was exposed to was Wahhabism rebranded as Salafism, and then I came to the truth. A lot of people don't want to look in the mirror because I may have spent 5, 10, 20 years in that nonsense. So that means if I recognize that's falsehood, I got to go back and reevaluate everything I learned and realize that everything wasn't so hunky-dory as I thought it was when I became Muslim. And it's the same way with the with the other extreme or the other end of the spectrum, where people may have came through the nation or other groups like the Moorish Science Temple, and they don't want to all the way let it go because there's an emotional attachment there. And so, I'll end off with that. Alhamdulillah.
Exactly. Okay.
Alhamdulillah. Your microphone is
I'm
muted.
keep pressing it wrong, but so inshallah, I'll try to put my two, and then we'll go back. And inshallah, if we can give, so everybody write those points that you had, whatever you saw from the different speakers, so we could try to have the conversation controlled. So we're taking like 6, 7, 8 minutes. We gave Imam Luqman 20 because he's our elder, so we respect that. But I think we can summarize his 20 minutes in 5 minutes, so we're good with that.
Imam Amin.
Yes.
I was one thing I forgot to say, and it was really, I hope you're going to clarify in what you say, because Imam Faheem touched on it. When we say sex, S-E-C-T, when we say that word, everybody has something different in their mind. So I think it will be good if we can clarify from an Ahlul Sunnah classical traditional perspective exactly what a sect is and what a sect is not. So,
okay, so so here how I would address this issue. I would like to say first, let's get where we agree and where we disagree, right? And somebody raised the issue, and I'll just quickly indicate it, and we'll come back when we get to the questions, that everybody here is Ash'ari and Shafi'i, so it's not inclusive. And I think we all come from different backgrounds where we understand stuff. And I tell people all the time, you gotta learn to listen, because Bin Baz wasn't no Ash'ari, right? So if Imam Luqman said, when I learned and I was sitting with Bin Baz, automatically the Ash'ari is going to reject that statement from the door. So you're not listening well. That's why I say listen. Because when he said Bin Baz, I don't think Ash'ari, I got a whole nother, but that's not the point of discussion. So we're not all the same, right? But we'll have a discussion. So follow me. Let me address what I'm saying about this point. What we agree on, all Muslims, is that Allah said, وَاطَّصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah as one group and never separate. So we understand that is all of our intent. So everyone who says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, his intention or her intention is to follow the jama'ah of the Muslimin, right? That's what everyone wants. Secondly, the nature of being in different groups, or you can call firaq or a firqa, Islamiyah, is something that was related from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that all Muslims know about this hadith, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the Jews, they separate into 72 groups, sects, whatever term you want to use, a firqa, sects, and the Christians went into, the Jews into 71, and the Christians into 72, and my ummah would be into 73, right? All of them would be in the hellfire except one. And the scholars, they have many, many discussions surrounding this hadith, from its authenticity, from its meaning, from its application. That's a whole nother discussion. But when we talk about groups and sects, this is the foundational hadith by which people talk about it. And there are various narrations of the reply to the Prophet ﷺ when he made that one group, which all of us would say al-firqatin najiyah, the saved sect or the saved group. Now, in some narrations, the Prophet ﷺ said, Ma ana alayhi wa ashabi, what I am upon and my companions. In other narrations, he said al-jama'ah. In another narrations, as-sawad al-a'zam, and many, many various narrations that the scholars of hadith mention about this hadith, right? So this is the basis. So we understand Islamically that Allah told us something and the Prophet ﷺ told us something that would occur despite what we're all striving for. So that is not something that any of us after that time have invented, it is something that is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there's going to be differences among the Muslims. And there are other narrations that the Prophet ﷺ related about this issue. Now the question becomes, since this is the issue, what do we do? How do we solve the issue? From my understanding, what I learned with my teachers, who were hadith scholars and fuqaha and all of these different Islamic titles that we give for scholarship, they reminded us of the hadith related from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allah la yajma'u ummati ala dalala, fa idha ra'aytum ikhtilafan fa alaykum bis-sawad al-a'zam." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Verily Allah would never allow my nation to agree upon misguidance. Whenever you see ikhtilaf, whenever you see difference among them, فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالسَّوَادِ الْأَعْظَمِ." The word Sawad al-A'zam, it means Jamhur al-Ummah, the majority of this nation. Follow what they follow. When we put that in another hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Yad Allahi fawqa al-jama'a, wa man shadda shadda ila an-nar." That the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is ta'wil, because I don't ascribe limbs to Allah, so you understand exactly for someone who listen in Arabic. When I say Yad Allah, I'm not meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a limb. That's why I said the protection of Allah. And this is a valid approach, even from some of the scholars of the Salaf. That's another tangent. But here, he said that Allah's protection, Allah's Yad, is over the Jama'ah. And whoever deviates from that has deviated to the hellfire. So when we talk about this issue, how I look at it is, how has the majority of the Muslim nation, past and present, Jamhur al-Ummah, most of this nation, what was their methodology in practice, in belief, and in spirituality? And we take that from the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam. When Jibreel came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he asked the Prophet about al-Islam, about al-Iman, and about al-Ihsan, and then he asked about the as-sa'a, the hour. And at the end, he said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "This is Jibreel, he came to teach you your religion." And the ulama of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the majority of the scholars of this nation, past and present, when they explained Islam, they said Islam is an indication to al-fiqh, to the rules of jurisprudence. Al-Iman is an indication to the science of al-Aqidah. Al-Ihsan is an indication to the science of Tasawwuf, which is Sufism. Our scholars, the majority of the Muslim nation, past and present, have always been having the sciences of Islam, the primary sciences of Islam, in these three things. And the methodology of the majority of the Muslim nation was following preserved methodologies, which we call madahib, or schools of thought, and in Tasawwuf they call turuq, or spiritual paths, from the time of the Prophet ﷺ until Islam was systematized into sciences. This methodology was passed on from generation to generation to generation, with an unbroken chain of narration to our day today. And when we want to measure if someone is following the methodology of the majority of the Muslim nation, whom the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah would protect them and they would always be on the right path, by far you will find that the majority of the Muslims of this nation, from the 3rd century Hijrah down to our day and into the 2nd history century, they have been following these great established Imams in the areas of Aqidah, in the areas of fiqh, in the areas of Tasawwuf. And I challenge anyone who disagrees with that to produce one chain of narration that doesn't contain scholars who conveyed this religion that weren't Ash'ari or Maturidi, that weren't Shafi or Hanafi or Maliki or Hanbali, and they weren't Sufi. I'm not asking for 10 chains. I'm asking for one pure chain to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that did not contain these three elements. And if that can't be produced, then it is, and it can't be, it is obvious that this is the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And I'll stop there. That's my opening comment.
Alhamdulillah. Can I say something?
That
Takbir.
was the finisher, Imam.
Okay.
Takbir. Aqulu qawli hadha wa astaghfirullah.
Okay, now let me give
That
it.
was the finisher.
I like to give it.
We're,
But,
we're done here.
You got 5 to 10 minutes, Imam. You get the most time. You the elder. Go ahead.
But Imam, I appreciate you laying it out in that way, right? And you're right. And I agree with maybe 70% of what you said, except that the majority, because the Sawad al-Azam, when you say, the general people, because most Muslims in the world, most of them have no idea what a Maturidi Aqid is. They have no idea what Ash'ari Aqid is. They have no idea of the details of Shafi'ism. My daughter was 29 years old, and my daughter Huda, she understands fiqh. And she called me one day, she said, Abu. I said, what? She said, are we Shafi'i? And I taught my kids Shafi'i fiqh perspective. But I never said, this is the Shafi'i. This is me teaching you religion. And for most people, most people around the world, they know Allah, they know the Messenger of Allah, they know the Quran, they know Hadith, they know what's in the Hadith of Jibreel. And because the reason that scholars agreed on Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah was because scholars were starting to have so many differences in minutia, differences in Aqidah, differences in Minhaj. So they came up with a term around about the time of Abu Hanifa. They said, listen, we're just going to call all of us, what you were saying, Naeem, amen, Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah, right? So it was a broad umbrella. But for the average people right now today, they just want a law. They just want to go to the agenda. They just want to know, listen, man, how do I do this right here? And for scholars, and one of the problems that we have in the modern age is that we took discussion that should be held strictly amongst scholars of Islam, and we made that discussions for everyday rank and file. So people testing people, average person, where's Allah? I don't know. He everywhere. Well, stuck for and so it was never intended for the discussions of scholars and scholarship to be something that the average person is tested with. The average person wants to go to Jannah. Allah says, "Inna alladhina qalu rabbana Allahu thumma istaqamu tatanazzalu alayhim al-malaikatu alla takhafu wa la tahzanu wa ubshiru bil jannati allati kuntum tu'adun." He said, anyone who says, my Lord is Allah, and they just try to be upright, tatanazzalu alayhim al-malaikatu alla takhafu, angels descend on them when they die, saying, don't fear, don't grieve. The Prophet himself, alayhi salam, and I took from the hadith where it says, where he said, Ma ana alayhi wa ashabi, what me and my companions are upon, and we're jama'ah. And that's one of the narrations that you mentioned when he was talking about the sex, is that the Prophet himself, he spoke to comforts. The Prophet, there are very few hadiths that even go more than a couple paragraphs. It was rare. The Prophet gave small amounts, and he said, "Inni utitu jawami al-kalim," and the whole religion that the Prophet taught for 23 years, it all consisted of small amounts of deen, small amounts here, small amount here, basic stuff. The Prophet didn't even talk about Aqidah in the way we talk about Aqidah now. He didn't talk Ash'ari Maturidi. I understand the role that they did, but the minhaj of the Prophet himself, alayhi salam, is the deen al-Hanafiyyah samha. It's the deen, the basic deen. The Prophet said, ad-deen yusrun wa lan yashadid ad-deenu ala ahadin illa ghalaba. He said religion is easy, and religion is not made incumbent upon anybody except it will overtake them. If I want to sit down and have really a conversation with somebody about Aqidah, we can go on for hours. I can take Damn, anything somebody can say, I can say, well, well, do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? And I don't think that the deen was not intended to be a trial upon the people like that. Most of the people, the Prophet in the Sahara, he said that most of the people that go to Jannah are going to be the fuqara, are going to be the average poor people. That's the majority and the Sahaba. They were ummiyun. They were unlettered people. They were unlettered. They were ignorant people. And so the deen that they got from Rasulullah, it was not an advanced minhaji theological discussion. It was basic. And that's why when Jibreel alayhi salam, when he came and he taught those things to the Prophet in that famous hadith, and that hadith defines the deen. You can put other names on it. Yeah, you can say Sufism is another minhaj. But I'm telling you that I have known Muslim women. I had a student named Zamira, man. She was in her 80s. And when she learned how to read the Quran in Arabic, man. She came through the Warfdeen Muhammad community and she was in the nation. This lady, man, I have very rarely seen people who I don't know what their faith was, but I'm saying she had Iman. She had Iman. She had Iman that, man, I would love to have that kind of Iman. And didn't know no knowledge, no nothing. No nothing. All she knew was Allah is my Lord. I do my prayers. I pay my zakat. I fast when Ramadan and she couldn't fast anymore. She made her hajj. She believed in Allah, and this is what the deen is, right? To believe in Allah, and His malaika, and His kutub, and His rusuli, and Yawm al-Akhir, and the Qadr, khayrihi wa sharrihi, and the good and bad of the Qadr. This is Iman. Now, most people, that's the part of the Islam that they embrace. That's what they come in on. And most people are going to stay on that. I think conversations about theology need to remain amongst scholars or people qualified. Now, we did have that Salafi thing came in and they put all this stuff on the general people and it put imams in a position they had to defend it. And it's different because the Salafi fight in Camden and and my nephew be down there fighting with y'all, not with you, but he be on. I'm like, dude, like, really? But I understand. But he's in Camden. He's in Camden. The fight is intense. In Philly, it's more intense. It's more intense because the effects of modern day Salafism is different there. But that's not the same in California. That's not the same in Wisconsin. That's not the same in Kansas City. That's not the same in upstate New York. So we have to look at, how the average person is affected by this. I think that we should, Imam, remember you were doing this thing on Akida, and I'm saying, why he's still doing this thing on Akida? Well, because you deal with this stuff down there in Atlantic City. You have to do that.
Can I share something with you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The one who lives in the war zone knows why he needs weapons.
Exactly. Listen, I have total respect for that. It took me a minute. I said, why is this guy? I think I texted you with that, Imam. You covered the Akida course. Why are you still going over Akida? This, but I understand you're dealing with this onslaught. So you have to do that. But that's not the case for everybody. So we have to look at the deen, how it's going to help everybody. We don't want to bring everybody into ideological warfare because, man, that's just like, what? Man, dude, like, I just want to go to Jannah. I just want to know how to make salat. I want to learn 10 surahs. I want to maybe read Juz Amma or something. I just want to go to Jannah. And so I think that we can do a disservice to the people when we bring detailed scholarly argument about Aqidah and about usul, even about fiqh, and you bringing that to the average person. He's like, dude, I just want to know, do I wipe over my socks or not? And I want to go to a question somebody said.
Imam, you can't go to a question yet because you passed your 10 minutes.
Go ahead.
You got to write some stuff down. You got to summarize it, Imam. You got to summarize it.
I can't, man. I'm trying, man.
All right, so Imam Naeem, since Imam Faheem said you're a young buck, so you got to go next.
Abdullah. I just wanted to comment on one thing Imam Luqman said.
Okay.
Just write the question down. We're going to get him, Imam. Just write it down.
No. I'm saying I have to break to make a mugger real quick.
Oh, go ahead. We'll have the conversation without you. We'll wait till you come back.
I just want to hear what
when I came into Islam, 1991, I didn't know anything about schools of thought or what have you. I learned how to pray by the brothers who taught me and the books they gave me to learn. I was praying like a Hanafi. No one said, you're Hanafi, but I was Hanafi, at least in my prayer. I don't think, at least in this landscape, that Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaat are the ones who started to bring all this technical terminology and all that. It's the Wahhabis that did it.
Of course it was.
They're the ones who did it.
It was, yeah. Of course.
And so, I think we have,
Yeah, it was.
so now we have to walk it back and we have to explain all of these things.
Right.
Before we just, we learn from our teachers and we practice.
Exactly. You're right. You're right about that.
And so, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, I'm gonna cut off. I'll be right back.
Imam Faheem, go ahead.
Yeah, Imam Naeem just mentioned about when he accepted Islam. I accepted Islam in the same year. MashaAllah. And you're right. When I accepted Islam, I was in prison actually, and it wasn't these ideological arguments. I mean, I never heard this stuff about Allah, like people believing Allah had limbs and being in a place and a location. All we knew that we believed in Allah and the Prophet Sallallahu and we back then it was Bukhari and Muslim, and anything else we had to be cautious about reading Hadith. We didn't know if it was Sahih,
Bukhari, Muslim, Fiqh Sunnah.
Yeah, right. And I remember reading this book that was it was about the four Imams. It was a book with a blue cover, and it had a scale on it. I can't remember the name, but it was about the lives of the Ai-Imma, and at that time when I read it, and I was like, man, I want to be Imam Shafi. If I'm going to follow a madhab, which we was thinking that was told it was the opinions of men, you following the opinions of men. I said, well, if I do follow madhab, I want to be Shafi. And subhanAllah, as Allah will have it, all my teachers have been Shafi,
Allahu Akbar.
So, but just the miseducation, or people teaching us that madhabs is blindly following, and not really putting things in its proper context. Now that I had to, undo some of that stuff, because I used to be a Salafi, and I used to run with some of those, some of those known Salafis in this Northeast region. Then I understood that, following the madhab was following qualified authoritative scholarship, calling it blind following, then following qualified scholarship, a body of scholarship. It has two different connotations, you know what I'm saying? So, and just had to unlearn all of that language that was being, and then, like you said, it was the Wahhabis that was, interjecting all of these terminologies, because when they said Ahlul Sunnah, then they made it their business to say that Asharis weren't from Ahlul Sunnah. And
can I just share something, one fiqh, Imam? For y'all brothers on the chat, be considerate of others who actually came to listen to the Imams, to hear that. If y'all want to have your own debate, could y'all do that somewhere else? Or just stop and then get on each other's friend list and debate. Right here, we're trying to do something in a constructive way. What y'all doing in the chat box is not constructive. So please, just do us, because I don't want to block nobody and I don't want to take you out. Y'all can debate on your own time. That's not what we're doing here. We're having a constructive discussion. So don't distract the others with that, so that we don't lose people who really want to benefit because they tired of y'all comments. So just be merciful, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Go ahead.
Yeah, then I remember, coming to the Masjid, and I used to see these books by the Habashis in Philly. And I remember some of the books they used to say, Allah exists without a place. And, I was around with people, oh, don't read those books, man. They deviant, such and such and such and such. But that statement always clicked with me, like, man, yeah, Allah doesn't need a place to exist. And then later on, I would learn that was the right Aqidah, and this whole, this whole thing, just fighting against Ahlul Sunnah, deliberately, promoting these ideologies and calling, switching it around. So I know for me, it's like I had to really undo a lot of that stuff, what I learned, and just, had to humble myself and be cautious and be like, okay, let me go back and look at this stuff. And then I started reading history. And I remember Allah always send you signs. Allah always send you signs. Because I remember being in the midst of the Wahhabi movement, and it was always these glorified stories of how the Muslims at the polytheists of his time, and they were worshiping idols, and he came to purify the land and bring back the pure tawheed and all this. And at that time, it didn't register. Wait a minute, this has been the Muslim land since the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So how was that? And I remember some other people that I were around, they were telling me straight, no, this man was an innovator, And I was like, wow. So whenever you hear statements like that, it makes you pay attention. So then, once I got thrown off the minhaj, I got put on the list, so it opened up other avenues. And so then I started reviewing a lot of stuff, and this made sense, So we got to undo a lot of the stuff that's popular. And like Imam Luqman said, in other areas, it's not really an issue like it is where we're located in this northeast region of America. But I know in Camden and Philly, we got some of the worst manifestations of this Wahhabi movement. The Madkhalis, in Camden, like they got is one of their strongholds. We battling people that when he was talking about giving you your basic stuff, people won't even give you the basic rights of Islam because they consider you a deviant. And they never talk to you. They never discuss with you anything. They never asked what was going on. They never clarified anything with you. Just someone else told them, and they are a student of knowledge, and they said this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? So it's a big mess where we are. So we do gotta counter and make stuff clear and undo a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, go ahead, man.
I just want to piggyback on what you said. Imam Luqman mentioned it about every place is not like Philly or Camden or Atlantic City. It may not be, but war is war. Like Imam Amin used the analogy of war. Okay, in Philly, in Camden, Atlantic City, it's open warfare. It's bullets flying, to use that parable. But Pittsburgh, it's off. It definitely ain't like Philly. It's not like Atlantic City or Camden, but it's still a war. It's just a cold war. A war is war, right? It's a cold war. Like, so how does a cold war look like in this context? Anytime the Muslims come together, they're not going to be a part of it. Anytime the imams trying to come together or the communities, they're not going to be a part of it. They're off doing their own thing. And so it presents a problem, whether it's an open war or a hot war or a cold war. So it may not look the same, but the essence is the same. The teachings is the same. And it's still hurting and affecting a lot of people just the same. So I don't think we should necessarily make a distinction because it's real hot and funky in Philly, but it's real low key under the carpet in Pittsburgh. But the end result is the same. They believe that we are not Muslim. And when they first came out, they would actually say it. But they're a little bit more politically correct now, so they use the word deviant instead of a kafir. But we know when they first got on the East Coast, they used to make outright takfir, So I just wanted to add that to it, because a lot of people try to make it seem like, oh, it's not the same, outside of the hotbed areas like Philly. It's still the same war. It's a different stage of war. That's all. It's a cold war, but the end result is the same.
So Imam, look, Mom, I didn't wait because I wanted to get back so you can hear my comments.
Okay.
Because I want this to be a balanced conversation where we really exchange some things. So for me, when I look at two things, I look at scholarship and I look at common people. I place people in those two categories. Scholarship has its level, and so do common people. So if we want to say you have scholars, and I mean Islamically the term scholar, not what we use in our everyday dialogue. When we say ulama, with the conditions of ulama based on whatever science you're talking about. So if we're talking about ulama in the science, scholars in the science of Aqidah, then we're talking about those type of scholars. Scholars in the area of fiqh, we're talking about those. Scholars in Tasawwuf, we're talking about those. Scholars in Hadith, we're talking about those. In Tafsir, in the Islamic sciences, scholars are relative to the science. Rarely do you find a scholar who know everything. That's a fantasy.
Nobody.
And anyone who sat with scholars, and most of us, which you're right, they never even saw a scholar, a real scholar. We say Imam Amin or Imam Luqman or Imam Faheem or Imam Naim, the scholars. But all of us know when we say Islamic scholarship and we're talking about fields of study, we're not talking about us. And we know that. So I'm making a distinction between the two. So now we'll fall under not ulama, al-awam, common people. But among the awam, there are levels. Not everybody's the same. Some lame people, common people, they just know the 5 pillars. Some know details. Some know books. Some can actually derive some rulings, but they're still common people. With that said, when I say the majority of the nation, and it has been understood by Islamic scholars, we're not talking about common people.
Hey man, can I just?
All right, yeah, but let's go back and forth. So go ahead.
I just want to put on one point about the scholarship thing, because scholarship is a relative term, and like for example, I have a degree in Sharia, right? And so most people now, if somebody from overseas comes and goes even through a mufti program, if he goes through a 4-year or 6-year mufti program in South Africa, we consider him a scholar. We consider him a sheikh. He's a sheikh. This is a sheikh. Wait, let me finish.
Let me ask a question real quick.
Yeah.
When you say we, you should define who you mean by we.
We as Black American Muslims, we still suffer from the slave mentality, where you can get a person from Egypt, nothing against Egypt, you can put a fake beard on him, a kufi in a thobe, and bring him to just about any black masjid in the United States of America and say, this is Sheikh so-and-so. And he'll lead the prayer because maybe he know Quran, and he'll get out and give a talk, and they'll go home and say, you know what? We had the Sheikh, some scholar was here from so-and-so, so-and-so, without even knowing his background. And so the average person that we call a scholar, you have some illustrious scholars. You have like the one that, like for example, Dr. Wahba Zuhaili. I consider him a great scholar. He wrote some real good stuff. I consider Sayyid Ramadan al-Bulti, rahimahullah, to be of a high scholarly level. I consider. Let me just finish.
Let me ask you a question about those two scholars, for instance, because I'm trying to make a point.
Yeah.
Right. Sheikh, and most people won't know who we're talking about, but everybody else know, and we can explain. These were 2 Syrian scholars, well-known, famous Syrian scholars. Sheikh Zuhaili, and my teacher, among my teachers, Sheikh Mohammed Sayyid Ramadan al-Bouti. Right?
That's a high level of
But do you mention those scholars in the same breath with Abu Hanifa and Shafi and Malik? Absolutely not.
No. Listen. The reason.
You didn't answer the question.
Because I didn't know Abu Hanifa. I didn't know
Imam. Scholarship. Is it anything there?
Well, Imam Shafi. I'm a Shafi, so but Imam Shafi.
The question.
But let me just.
You didn't answer the question. That was a straight question.
I wouldn't mention them in the same tone, but to me.
Why?
Well, because they are scholars who are talaqqa bil qabul for generations.
By the who?
By the general Muslims.
By the ummah.
Listen, I wouldn't put anybody in the category of Suyuti or a Nawawi. In fact, when we were students, man, if a book had Nawawi on it, we just got the book. Nawawi, boo. And Imam Nawawi say so-and-so, that is the madhab.
Here's what I'm making a point. Let me help you with that. Just as a help. Because these are from among my teachers and the teachers of my teachers.
Because you're Shafi'i too, right?
Yeah, I'm Shafi'i.
Okay, all right.
And I'm not talking about from theory. They are the teachers, my teachers, and the teachers of my teachers, right?
Yeah.
Neither one of them would compare themselves to Shafi, Abu Hanifa, or Malik. In fact, both of them were followers of the Shafi'i madhab. Both of them were Ash'ari. Both of them were Sufi.
Right.
So the point I'm making, even the ones we're considering as scholars themselves, they distinguish between mujtahid, high-level scholars, and laymen who have knowledge.
Right, but see,
You understand my point?
no, of course you don't understand.
I just want to establish that.
But see, all right, but see, here's the thing: when it comes to practical fiqh, practical usul, actionable fiqh for a people, for a budding civilization, for Black American Muslims, that is really, I don't like to see people in the mode of comparing, who's scholar is better than who's scholar. We have scholars in history that there are very few people that can be compared to them. I don't think hardly anybody can be compared to Jalaluddin Suyuti. He's like a genius. An-Nawawi was like a genius, but An-Nawawi too was very basic. Ibn Kathir, he was also a Shafi'i scholar, right? But if
Can I ask you a question though, Imam Luqman, because we're trying to get to a point,
right,
and you're right on it. So you mentioned, and I'm gonna just keep pointing till we get to a point. You mentioned as-Suyuti, right? Jalaluddin as-Suyuti. What was his madhab?
he was a Shafi'i.
You mentioned An-Nawawi. What was his madhab?
He was a Shafi'i.
You mentioned Ibn Kathir. What was his madhab?
Shafi'i.
Okay, so everybody you mentioned follow the methodology, even though some of them were at the level of independent judgment, they follow the methodology of Shafi. You could say Abu Hanifa, Malik, or Imam Ahmad, or any of them. Right. So my point is all of these scholars, they follow this methodology. And you, to your own admittance, and you're going higher and higher up the scholarly level, but you're admitting all of these great scholars follow the madhab and the way of the majority of the ummah. And then we say that common people don't have to do that. They could just go to the Quran and Sunnah on their own. That logically doesn't make sense.
No. Here's what I'm saying. Common people should have imams.
Okay, say it again.
Common people should have imams.
And what do we mean by imams?
You should every common Muslim in America should have an imam who's an imam of a masjid.
No, that's not what you mean by imam.
No, listen to me. Every common because a common person is not going to be able to access the methodology of Jalaluddin Suyuti. They're not going to be able to go through Itqan. They will get lost on the first page if you have not been trained to know. Even you're a Shafi'i. Shafi'i speaking the language of Allah, which is a whole different language altogether. Whether it's Fath al-Bari, whether it's Ibn Kathir, whether it's Al-Hafiz al-Iraqi, anyone, Nawawi, they speak in a certain language. You can't even, if you have not been trained, you're not going to open up Tadrib al-Rawi.
All right, so here's my point. But listen, what you're doing, and I'm not saying you as my brother, we're talking, and what is the problem with the Salafi madhab? And because we're not addressing the real issue,
I wrote a book on this.
They're making everybody do something that they're not qualified to do.
Exactly.
You're telling people who are common people some of them who don't know Alif from Ta.
To do the research, brother. Read all the hadith.
Go to the Quran, go to the hadith, make your own legal rulings. When no one in the history of Islam has ever said it.
Nobody
so
did that.
Why are we making an exception because we're in America that we can do that when we don't have the qualifications?
Right.
Stop.
Nobody's qualified to do that. Even scholars follow a minhaj that came before them.
All right, stop. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah. But I just wanted to get to this definition about
scholars. Let me give you one more question, because we got to clarify something.
Okay.
Even there's some things we don't have to disagree on. That's why I said, come and we agree. Would Bin Baz, and you know my position with Bin Baz, I don't follow Bin Baz. I don't accept Bin Baz as a qualified scholar. Yes. Nevertheless, listen, I'm speaking to me. I'm not saying other people don't. I'm speaking of myself, and I have reasons why. Would Bin Baz accept himself, and you as a student of Bin Baz, would he accept any common person opening up the book in the Quran and Sunnah making legal judgments? What was the position of Bin Baz for common people? They had to follow what?
A madhab, at least.
Okay. Rest my case.
I mean,
So
he
if
was a
Bin
Hanbali.
Baz can say it, if As-Suyuti can say it, if An-Nawawi can say it, if Al-Buti would say it, Wapi Suhaili used to say it, who are we or any of us who are nowhere near their level to come tell people you don't got to do that? Explain.
Well, I think that the Salafis are errant in that point, right? But for the average person, because one, we live in a state of ignorance, and two, people just aren't trained. I mean, they just don't have the time. They just don't have the capacity. Not that they can't if they were put in a situation, but the way that people follow madhahib, for example, when I was Imam before I came to Toledo, 20 years at Masjid in Sacramento, I was a Shafi'i, and people know that any kind of ruling that I made about, Eid or how we did Eid or Jum'ah or whether it was an inheritance, it was always based upon the Shafi'i method. Although we had a lot of Hanafis in the Masjid, and we even had Ahl Hadith, because about 60% of the 60% of the Masjid were people. They were immigrants. A lot of them were Hanafi. We had some who were Maliki, mainly the African American brothers. They were Maliki, and they had their thing. We didn't really make it a point. But as the Imam, of course, I'm going to teach this shit. But even when I taught fiqh, I didn't say I'm teaching Shafi'i fiqh. No, I'm just teaching you fiqh.
When you was teaching fiqh, even though you didn't say Shafi'i fiqh, was you teaching fiqh according to a qualified methodology of a mujtahid?
Of course.
Or was you teaching fiqh or sunnah? Which one?
No.
That's a
Hey, don't bust on my shake, man. I studied with Sayyid Sabak in Mecca for 9 months, man. He was our teacher in tafsir, and he was our teacher in fiqh.
But when we talking about, here's
fiqh sunnah is a good book, bro. Come on.
Fiqh and sunnah, you know what my sheikh used to say about fiqh and sunnah? He said that's like putting a tricycle on a highway, right?
No, fiqh sunnah is an excellent book.
There's no way. And I'd like to have this conversation when we have these.
I got fiqh sunnah on my shelf somewhere. Where?
I know you do. You got Bin Baz and Sifat al-Salat al-Nabi and everything else, right? Right.
Because
I love you, Imam Luqman. You know that. I love you with all my heart.
Because
I told you tonight is going to be your roast night.
Scholarship is embracing scholarship. Because it's embracing scholarship. The Prophet said, he said, "Al-hikmah dalatul mu'min fa'aynama wajadaha fahuwa ahaqqu biha." Wisdom is the lost item of the believer. Wherever he follows it, he has a right to it. For example, I teach out of Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam, and Ibn Rajab was a Hanbali. Right?
But that's not a fiqh book. You don't teach fiqh out of Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam. That's not a book of fiqh.
I teach fiqh out of Tanbih. I teach fiqh I'll teach fiqh out of Tanbih. I'll teach fiqh out of Sayyid Sabik's book.
I know, but that here's my point.
The average person, that's great.
I know, but here's my point. What happens when we don't be honest with each other, and this is what I fear for us.
Out of Majmur, but Majmur, you can't teach fiqh out of there. It would take you 200 years to teach from that.
I ain't talking about that. But here's my point. What happens to us? What we end up doing I have a saying. I say default Wahhabi. You know what I mean by that when I say default Wahhabi?
He's got a problem with the Wahhabis, man.
I do. I got a series.
I know you do.
You know that Sheikh you mentioned, Al-Buti. He wrote a book. Sheikh Al-Buti, rahimahullah, rahmatin wasiyah. He wrote a book, and it's available in English. He said, Alamat Habiyah, which is not following qualified scholarship, is the most dangerous innovation threatening the sacred law. Why did he say that? Because instead of following 4 qualified legal scholars, when we wipe that out and we tell people to do whatever they want, what we do is we allow a bunch of people to become false scholars, and we pervert our religion. That's the problem. So now you know, as an imam, and every one of us as imams know, what we got is in the masjid a bunch of people who don't even know their fard basic obligations, making legal judgments.
People don't even know the shurut of salat, bro.
Yeah. So how did that happen? That happened by telling everyone just follow Quran and Sunnah. You don't need to follow no qualified. They say you don't need to follow a madhab. What that means, you don't need to follow qualified scholarship, and that's why you making all these mistakes. So the problem is not division. The problem is that we're not separated the learned from the unlearned.
That's true. But now let me go back to the point about Black American imams and scholarship, okay? Because we are very, very, I believe that we should all be humble. And Allah says, فوق كل ذي علم عليم. But everyone who has knowledge is he who has knowledge. And there's different degrees of knowledge. But I'm not prepared to say that, because I'm Black and, listen, I've been studying for 40 years, 40. And on my blog, I got at least 22 shur that I studied under. At least 22, the ones that I remember. I'm not going to say, I don't put myself out, I'm a scholar, but I'm not going to, I don't believe in that self-deprecating thing that Black American Muslims, when we say, well, you know what, none of us are scholars, none of us really know, I don't go for that, because for me personally, I'm not speaking for anybody else. If I speak about an issue of deen, I know what I'm talking about. I don't speak about it unless I know the subject thoroughly, not just I just opened up a book and found. No, if I speak about an issue of deen, if I write about an article about the deen of Islam, if I write a fatwa and say this is the hukm al-Islam, this is the Islamic ruling on XYZ, I know what I'm talking about. So I don't believe in that self-deprecating thing that we do as Black American Muslims, because there was a fatwa out that came from the Salafis that there's no scholars in Islam. I totally reject that.
You mean in America?
Yeah, right. That there's no scholars of Islam in America. And I'm like, and I wrote an article about that. I'm like, wait a minute, you mean y'all went and you checked the ilm quotient of every single person in America and decided that no scholars? And let me tell you something, I don't have an issue at all sitting down with any scholar. I have friends who are scholars, and amongst ourselves, we consider each other scholars. I have other friends from Syria, from Egypt.
What happened to him? He hit the mute button?
Yes, thank you.
Imam, you hit the loop button.
Yeah, I'm just
hit the mute button, Imam.
Okay, can you hear now?
Yeah, go. We can hear you. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to say this. I do not believe in taking the position of self-deprecation when it comes to Black American Muslim imams who have been trained in the religious sciences. Because if you go to al-Qura, if you go to Azhar, then you will, if you come out of Azhar, you get a certain amount of information that you have to get to qualify to graduate from there. The same for Medina. Medina is a little bit higher level. Same for al-Qura and Mecca. Yeah, Medina is a little higher, but the same for al-Qura. It's a certain amount of information that you have to go in order to get your degree. If you go for a higher degree, and then even in that, you're going to have different variations depending upon who else a person studied with. And that person can come to America, man, with a degree of Azhar. He's a scholar, he's a sheikh. Immediately, no problem. Oh, sheikh so-and-so. But a Black American Muslim can come home with a master's degree, can come home with a PhD, and we'll still be like, well, he ain't really a scholar. That's just because of our own self-hate, our own self-deprecated modes as Black American Muslims. We still have a slave mentality. But so I'm not going to, I don't go out there and say, well, I'm a sheikh, I'm a scholar. No, but if I talk about deen, I know what I'm talking about. And I have no issue sitting down any one of my positions that I've ever written. I wrote over 250 articles about Islam in America. And
I think you're preaching to the choir on that note, as far as having a self-deprecating position just because someone's overseas or anything like that. I don't think any of us here have that.
But I'm just saying, we have scholars of Islam amongst us.
Can we
there's
let
brothers who I consider to
me
be
and you been
scholars.
hogging the mic? Can we let them talk too?
Maybe not high level scholars, but I'm just gonna say this. I don't believe in that, we black and we can't lead and we ain't sheikhs and we ain't scholars and we don't really know. We have to defer. I reject all that. Knowledge is knowledge, man. Whoever got it. Knowledge is knowledge. And Allah says, Wattaqullah wa ya'limukumullah. Fear Allah, Allah will teach you. And Allah also says, Yu'ti hikmata man yasha wa man utiya hikmata faqad utiya khayr kathira. Allah gives wisdom to whomever he wants. And I've seen people who haven't even been overseas, man. I know brothers who haven't even been overseas, man, who have memorized qasaid, memorized, parts of hadith. You had the first like Ahmad Zafir, man. He didn't spend much time overseas. He was a black American, man. He memorized the whole of Sahih al-Bukhari, man. With Asani. I'm just saying we have that. So
Can we let them go, Imam? We're gonna come back. We gotta give
it a chance. I just had to get it out, man.
I know I was gonna come back to that, but go ahead, Imam Naeem or Imam Faheem.
I defer to my elder.
Imam Faheem.
Yeah, it was a lot to unpack there, man. MashaAllah. Imam Luqman, you took the stage, man. You didn't leave us no.
Oh, man, come on, man.
Yeah, but this sectarian thing, I'm thinking, from my experience where we are, it's starting to subside a little bit. And with all this, the advent of social media and people not really happen to, feel like people not feeling like they don't have to be under any imam. A lot of people are just displaced. And so they're not as committed as to communities as they used to be. So I mean, we just got a lot of stuff that we have to do for our people, and one of them is to break them out of those sectarian kind of thoughts, and really, I know my approach is usually just taking people where they are and understanding where they are, because, some people can claim they're Ahlul Sunnah, and then when you talk to them in detail, you find out that they don't really understand basic stuff, and some of the stuff they just been conditioned with, you come across laymen, they don't know the Fard and the Sunnah and the Mustahab of wudu, but they know about what books you shouldn't read and who's a graduate and who's not a graduate and all this stuff, and the stuff that they should know they don't know, and we just got a lot of work, and I kind of feel like I remember Ustad Anwar Muhammad and them, they used to always concentrate on building their institutions. And I used to wonder what Ahlul Sunnah, like when I was with Salafis, like I didn't hear a lot of people from Ahlul Sunnah, or, I was under the condition of thinking that everybody who was a Salafi was like a deviant, So, I mean, I never bought into that fully. I always listened to what somebody had to say, because I had an upbringing in the street before the deen. So, you in the streets, the code. You watch them niggas, you know what I mean? I hope that wasn't a cuss word, but we learned that you watch niggas, man. And so I was able to watch people. But I felt now looking back that there was a eerie silence from Ahlul Sunnah. And I see now it was a benefit to it, because now all of the people that we consider Ahlul Sunnah, they got institutions that they built, because they stay focused. But the Wahhabi movement kind of filled the void, and with this onslaught of sectarianism, that made it seem like that it was normal Islam, because to the common person, if you recite something from the Quran or what the Prophet ﷺ said, we all love that, and that's the law. I mean, we hear the slogan Quran and Sunnah, but every person who's worth their weight in Shahada know that that's the law. So you can understand where they're coming from, but then these funny interpretations of what that meant, and how it's implemented, really killed us. It's really stifled us as a people. And we got to get back to fighting that, as also teaching our people and taking people where they are, and really just giving them, all of us know the old school brotherhood and sisterhood, that really made Islam great. Where even people, they didn't pay attention to doctrine or creed that much, but they paid attention to how you treated them,
Exactly.
and a lot, and some of that we have to finesse with teaching the right akida, in my view, and Allah knows best. You know.
I think you touched on something that's extremely important. Imam Amin, he coined the phrase microwave Islam. And I think also part of the problem is that a lot of people like microwave food. When you dealing with the Wahhabis, we talking about them a lot. Because of their money and their financial backing and their organizational prowess, they were able to provide microwave Islam. They were able to mass produce a whole lot of books. They locked down the Islamic bookstores.
They did, man.
Every book I don't know about now, but before, every book you pick up, I don't care what the subject was, somewhere in the front or the back, what is Akida? Tawheed Uluhiyya, Tawheed Rububiyya, Tawheed Al-Asma wa Sifat. Right? So you was learning their Akida whether you wanted to or not. And then if you cared about knowledge, you know that all you had to do was go to this masjid. And if you wanted to get sent overseas to study, that was the plug. You can go overseas, the microwave, 2 to 6 years, 8 years, come back, you're a student of knowledge. If you got the right connection, you come back, we'll put you in the masjid. We'll fund you. We'll make sure that you can make Hajj every year. We'll make sure that you continue to get this money to support your institution, as long as you report back to us biannually or yearly and let us know the challenges to your dawah that you're having. That's organization.
We were
The
played.
people from Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they ain't been doing that.
Mhm.
They've been going overseas for self, and I can name a lot of them by name. And they've been singing Kumbaya, but they have, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and they're traditional, this madhab or that madhab, but they would be and should be the gatekeepers for Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but they keep letting this thing go on. And some of them that are literary and they write books, none of these books is available or in a price range for the common people. You're not going to find them in Islamic in your regular Islamic bookstore. So it's like the grassroots people have been, targeted and marketed to by the Wahhabis, and the traditional Muslims have turned their back on us. And a lot of them, just even, just personality wise, a lot of them are smug, condescending, disrespectful, and they even offended by the presence of the grassroots. So a lot of us are left in the hands of these Wahhabis. Like even I had a conversation with myself today. It was after I spoke to you, Imam. I said, SubhanAllah, you know what? You, Naeem Abdullah, you used to be a default Wahhabi. Because if you would have asked me in the early 90s, Naeem, teach me Tawheed, you know what I would have said? Okay, first you got to learn what, Tawheed or Uluhiyya is. And then you have to know what Tawheed or Rububiyya is. And then you have to know the Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat. And that's how I would have taught you Tawheed. Not knowing that they didn't teach like that in the early generations of Islam. That came on later. It was only that when I became exposed and taught that I said, hold on, wait a minute. I'm learning this Akida. Why I don't see nothing about Uluhiyya? Where's Rububiyya at? Where's Tawheed al-Ibad? Where's Al-Asma wa Sifat? I don't see this in the Risala ibn Abi Zayd. Where is that? I don't see that in the Akhtari. Where's that? I don't see it. I don't see it. Oh, that's that Wahhabi stuff. But I was never a Wahhabi. I was a default Wahhabi. Didn't know it. And so the point I'm trying to make is we have to have institutions here and abroad that support what we're talking about. Because we could talk about this all day. But if we're not building institutions where our people can get plugged in, and get a home cooked meal and not this, microwave food, or, if we're not, translating these books or our understanding of these books and putting the proper creed in there, We could be talking all day, but when people want to get a book, they're going to go online. They're going to go to the Ahmadiyya in Philly to buy a Wahhabi book at Islamic place. They're going to keep doing it. They don't care. Man, they in for the money, man. Listen, like, I don't believe in Wahhabi, none of that stuff. I'm Ahmadiyya. I believe Ghulam Ahmad is a messenger of Allah. And I'm going to sell you this Wahhabi book.
And they get
me, the Ahmadiyya, is going to sell you a book by someone that says I'm a deviant, but I don't care because I'm in for this money, right? And so they don't care, but because they get paid, but it's affecting us. It's affecting our families. It's affecting the generational continuity that we keep talking about.
And see, I think this whole conversation, and I watch people, sometimes a long conversation it gets lost with some people because we haven't, as a people, we haven't learned to be students. We haven't learned how to sit down and learn. And the bigger that is because most of us, unfortunately, are default Wahhabi. Why? Because that was poured down our throat. We don't know nothing else. I'll give you an example. Before the advent of Wahhabism, can you give me a few minutes to break something down?
I want to see how most people are default.
Break it down, man. Break it down.
I'm older. Break it down, though, man, because I'm out of
here. I'm gonna show you how everybody's before 19. I'm talking about the black community. I ain't talking about nowhere else. I'm talking about the black community, right? Because it's the old saying. They say crap rolls downhill, and who's always at the bottom of the hill and everything in this country?
The Negroes. That's
right. So we all agree with that. All right, check this out. Because I've been Muslim, I've been in Islam. I don't like to say I've been Muslim because I have blasphemous kufr beliefs. But I took my shahada when I was 10. I'm going to give my age. I'm 50 now. I've been in Islam for 40 years. From day one, I've been in the struggle. Listen to my point. When I came into Islam, what I thought was Islam, it was black stuff for everybody. Black movements were it. We ain't know nothing about no immigrants doing nothing. Everything was black power, black for black. Even no matter what you were, if you were a Muslim, that means you was on black time. That's how I came up. So this ain't a new thing for me to be a black man. I've been a black man since I was a kid. Right? Now listen, follow what I'm saying. So the default position for every inner city around the country, when they became Muslim, it had black nationalist overtones. Am I right or wrong? That was default. If you were a Muslim, that means you was on black time. That's what it meant.
But you know what though? We were raised in our house.
Your house is an exception. You know that, right?
Maybe because we were
not the general rule.
Because we were not allowed to be black nationalists.
You're not the general rule. I'm going to get to your default Wahhabism if you don't get mad at me when I point it out. Stop. All right, listen. Follow what I'm saying. So across the country, that's why most people who are Sunni now, if you study them, even whether they're Salafi or Ahl Sunnah or Madhab, they got roots in the black Islamic type of movements. Am I right or wrong? Most of them from some kind of black movement.
That's true.
Right? That's real. So that was the default. Now, part of why Sunni Islam, Ahl Sunnah, and when I say Ahl Sunnah, following one of the two schools in Aqidah, one of the four schools in fiqh, and following the path of Tasawwuf. That's what I mean when I say Ahl Sunnah. If someone else got another definition, we can discuss it. That's my definition, right? The reason why Ahl Sunnah didn't spread in the black community is because of racism. Because the people who were having Ahl Sunnah, a lot of those immigrants, they didn't go to the black community. And if they did go to the black community, they went to acquire servants and slaves in the name of Islam. Mental slaves, I don't mean physical. So that's a racist issue, which we're still dealing with today. That's why if you study Sunni, Ahl Sunnah in the black community and give it in the immigrant, in the white community, you'll find they have plenty of people who studied at all these prestigious universities you met, and the black people only got Wahhabism. How many graduates from Medina, which is a Wahhabi university, and how many black graduates from Al-Azhar, which is a Sunni university? Or from any other Sunni university in the world, how many black graduates you got?
In recent years, that's a good point, Shay.
I know. All right, I'm going to finish. So
That's a good
now,
point.
for us, go in the bookstores around the country. What is available in the bookstores? For the average Muslim who wants to become Muslim, what are you going to get in the bookstore? What type of book?
Salafi.
So when we say Salafi, you studied in Saudi Arabia. What was Salafi originally called before it was called Salafi?
It's called Wahhabi then.
Say it again, loud. They didn't hear you. You studied in Saudi Arabia.
But alhamdulillah, they taught
No,
that as
no,
far as I
no,
can.
we got to be fair. This is black talk.
No,
This
it was
is our
called
own
Wahhabi.
platform. We can be real.
It was called
Before
Wahhabi.
it was called Salafi. What were they called by their scholars?
It was called Wahhabi.
One more time.
What? You know what's
No,
Wahhabi?
the people need to, they talking. They're not listening to you.
One more again.
What were they called?
It was called Wahhabi.
Okay,
They-
all right.
Listen, they only changed it to Salafi to give it kind of a cleaner interpretation. They can tie it more to the Salafi Saleh, and that happened about 1979 after the Iranian Revolution, because when Imam Khomeini, who was a Zaydi, who by the way is Ahl Sunnah too, the Zaydiyya and the Ja'fariyya are the two madhabs in the Shia Islam. They are Ahl Sunnah. Zaydiyya definitely.
Imam, let me go back. Hold on.
Go ahead.
I just want to make my point because you asked
Yeah.
me, how do we get Wahhabi by default? I'm telling you how we get it.
That's a good point. No,
So
that's
we
a
get
good
Wahhabi
point.
by default
That's a good point.
by everyone who wants to become a
That's a
Muslim
good point.
with the help of Western
What? I didn't even look at
action
that, but no,
with
shit, you're right.
Saudi.
You're
Their
right.
doctrine, their oil money has been pushed in the black community.
Yes, it
And
has.
therefore,
Without a doubt.
so the default, when anyone becomes a Muslim, that's what they're exposed to.
You know what?
And
You
since,
hit it on the head right there.
since people don't learn with teachers, they get a book, they take Shahada, they
Take
get
your
on the
CDs,
bookstore.
tapes, them.
Automatically, you're going to get tapes and books that are of the Wahhabi persuasion. You're not exposed to nothing else. So by default, even if you say, I'm not a Wahhabi, I'm not a Salafi, what is your mindset in America by default?
That is a good point, man. You know, I didn't even look at. I mean, I looked at it and I wrote about it in my book about the Salafis, but I didn't write it. I mean, and this book was written years ago, and I'm 20 years older than, or I'm 10 years older than you. So you've seen it from another perspective that I really. I mean, I saw it, but I didn't imagine about the. I think whoever said there was Salafi by default. I didn't even look at the Salafi by default issue.
We didn't say Salafi default. What we said?
Wahhabi by default.
Okay, come on. So we should erase. Here's the point.
I didn't even look at
By
that.
we keep saying
Imam,
Salafi,
That-
and
that-
you know,
that's-
here, Imam, Luqman. We keep saying Salafi, right? We're putting a spin on our people. Say Wahhabi, because you know what it is. No, seriously. If we complain about everybody else cheating our people, why are we participating in cheating our people?
Well, listen.
No, I'm
I will
asking you a
say
question.
Well, let me just explain myself. I did write a book called "The Devil's Deception of the Modern Day Salafia Sect," and you can get it on Amazon. And I broke it down. But after I wrote the book like 10 years ago, I thought that it was kind of over. Right? When you started talking about, and my nephew started talking about they still fighting, I'm like, what? They still got Salafi? I thought they was gone.
You know why they're not going? Because people like us, me and you, right? We know the truth and we keep going on with the party line when we know better. So you said the devil's deception of Salafia. Why didn't you say, then go back, redo your book, second edition or third edition, and say the devil's deception of Wahhabiyya, also known as Salafiyya?
You know what? I might do that.
Yeah, I suggest you do.
I might. No, listen. But see, here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Guess what? I'll be the first one to help fund it.
No, listen. Here's the thing, though, shit. We playing checkers. These jokers is playing straight up chess with us. You got to understand that there is a move that Black American Muslim communities are headed towards not just civilizational decline. We're headed towards extinction, man.
But
right?
how is that happening? You know Sahal ibn Tastari, that great scholar from the Salaf. Sahal at-Tustari.
He wrote a book about
Abdullah at-Tustari. He's from the Salaf.
Yeah.
Salaf, the real Salaf.
Yeah.
Great scholar.
Yeah.
He was asked, he said a statement. He said, Allah was never disobeyed with anything more severe than ignorance. Right?
Of course.
And he was questioned, do you know anything more severe than ignorance? He said, yes, ignorance of ignorance. That's a deep statement.
That's true.
Our people have been plagued with ignorance of this deen, and have been settled with any old thing that someone has given us. What I propose is that we start teaching them the deen correctly as it reached us with an unbroken chain to the Prophet ﷺ. And when we do that, we're going to necessarily pull out Wahhabi. You study with Bin Baz, I'll give you a challenge. I'll give you 6 months to do it. You ready? Give me the chain of Bin Baz back to the Prophet that is all Wahhabis or Salafis.
I don't know his chain, but listen.
No. That's a research project. I tell you, got 6 months.
Let me just qualify. You're gonna fund it. Let me.
Yeah, I'll fund that 6 months research. You know me, I'll fund.
Let me just qualify what I said about studying with Sheikh Bin Baz. I wasn't like his student or something. Sheikh Bin Baz used to do a dars every Thursday night at Dar Ifta in Mecca, and there'd be like 250 students in there. I happened to be one of those 250 students. I was maybe 20 years old, cramped in there to listen to what he had to say. That's what I see. I study. I wasn't like his student.
That's Talaki. That's Talaki.
I wasn't up under him. I don't think
you sat in the session. You heard from him, right?
But
you sat in the session. You heard from him, right?
Yeah,
that's valid.
He's a very astute scholar, but he did push the Wahhabi doctrine as far as he pushed the Wahhabi doctrine as far as Aqidah. But let me tell you something.
This is wrong. This is not the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah.
But listen.
So we gotta say I like Bin Baz.
But it's not. No. I'm not.
We gotta say I like Bin Baz, but he taught an Aqidah that didn't reflect the Aqidah of Suyuti and Nawawi or anybody else.
I'm not going to say that.
Why not?
Because I have
because we just respect each other and we're no longer going to deal with the truth.
No.
It's more disrespectful.
Why?
Who do you love more, Bin Baz or Black?
I refuse to say anything disparaging about a scholar of Islam that I have received knowledge of the deen about.
But I ain't disparaging. If I make a mistake, as your brother, you tell me, Imam Amin, this is a mistake.
I'm not going to speak badly of Bin Baz rahimahullah because he served the religion, and he was a blind man, and many people benefited. I benefited from.
We're not talking about Bin Baz. We're talking about Wahhabi doctrine. Let's not make it personal. Wahhabi doctrine. It's
but part of Wahhabi doctrine. Listen,
why you don't give that same thing to Elijah Muhammad then?
What?
And remember I said this?
I don't speak bad about Elijah Muhammad either.
But people will fire him up. Kafir, this, that. And
I don't go that far. Listen, he took Shahada on his deathbed. That's the narration that I got. And that's enough for me. As far as their doctrine, of course, you can find shirk in that, and there's different ta'wil on it. But as a rule, I don't really get into degrading the Nation of Islam, number one, because my family has a treaty with the Nation of Islam because we should be at war with the Nation of Islam. I mean, arms, shooting guns, people getting hurt and stuff like that. And we have a treaty with the Nation of Islam from way back, man, like going on almost 40 years now.
I think we're conflating a couple of things. A lot of because now we're talking about.
I don't want you to talk about, but but
here's my point. We're gonna let Naeem go, but this is my point.
Yeah.
If we're gonna have a discussion, and that's why I have the discussion with you, because it's like this. Here's a modern day today, and I'm saying because we gotta have these discussions. Either we have them or my grandchildren gonna have them. And I don't want my grandchildren having this discussion. They got building to do. So we better have it so they don't have it. If you understand my point. So, follow what I'm saying.
No, I got you.
Distinguish from individuals. We don't got to talk about individuals. We're talking about a doctrine. We're not talking about people.
Yeah.
So if the doctrine is wrong, we're talking about the doctrine. You don't got to speak about the individual, because that doctrine that Ben Baz has conveyed, or whoever other scholars, that doctrine has wreaked havoc in our community.
Yes, it has.
It's important. Yes, none of us knew Ben Baz or Wahhabism. And now
I'm right about that in my book.
2 hours dealing with an issue that was promoted by the Saudi Arabian regime, that Wahhabi regime that now got black people can't even talk to their parents.
Yeah, well, I talked about that. But here's what I'm saying, though. We talking chessers. These jokers are playing chess with us, man. There is a serious effort to destabilize, to debunk, to destroy Black American Sunni Muslims in this country, and a lot of it has come from the Saudis.
It's done now. It's our job.
How much these guys hate black people. I'm not saying every Saudi is a racist, but Saudis as the government, man, they will put $20 million, man. $20 million. You can go online and look it up yourself. You can look at Saudi Arabian endowments to major universities in the United States: Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, University of Penn. They will drop $10 million in University of Pennsylvania for a chair and ignore every struggling masjid, storefront masjid. They can't pay the rent, man. Don't give me to start. I'll start cussing again, man.
I know, but don't cuss. Imam, Luqman, look what you're saying. I agree with you. What is the fuel of the Saudi Arabian regime? What is their fuel? How did they get in power? Using what doctrine?
The Wahhabi doctrine.
Okay, so why, if you see the effect, why won't we deal with it?
I wrote a book about it, man. Come on now.
That's going to be in what edition you in that book? First edition or second edition?
First edition. I didn't get that.
We're getting ready to promote the second edition because I'm helping you with it.
No, hey, can I tell you a quick story real quick?
That goes back to my thing again. That goes, but yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There was a brother. This is back when I was living in New York. You know, he was getting ready to go overseas to study. And, you know, he was, you know, like a lot of us, you know, anti-government, blah, 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 blah. And so, you know, he was, he signed on to that Wahhabi way of thinking. So I asked him a question. I said, if the president of the country, I believe at the time it was George Bush, if he said, you know what, we love Muslims, and we want to promote Islamic scholarship in America because we're a multicultural society. Therefore, I'm allotting X amount of millions or billions of dollars, and we're establishing Islamic schools all over America. I said, would you go? He said, oh, hell no. No, I wouldn't go. I said, why not? Because I know he just run the game. He trying to, to pollute and poison the deen. I said, okay, what if I told you that this same America that you wouldn't go to a school, even though they openly came out and said that they support Islam and Islamic scholarship, what if this same America backed and supported another government who opened schools? Would you go there? And he said, oh, I see where you're trying to go. I ain't answering that question. Right? Because he did exactly that. And so, and this is the reality with a lot of us. We don't like to think things to their natural conclusion. We like, I don't even want to think about that. No, think it through. Just the same way we know that Black Lives Matter, the organization, was started and promoted and is still pushing an anti-Black LGBT agenda. How come we can't see the same thing in Islam and act accordingly?
Well, listen, y'all know I've written about that, man. Listen, they have the type of hate for Black Americans over there, man. Listen, they only about slavery in 1962. I'm not saying that every Saudi hate Black Americans, but there is a hatred that they have in that kingdom for Black American Muslims that goes so deep for blacks, period, because we are free people. They ain't used to black people that can speak up and they can't control it. They're not used to that. So when they come to America and see, man, they got niggas over here that can talk back, write articles, run for president. Oh my God, we just can't put them to the side. Or no, man, I'm telling you. And so a lot of the Salafia push, it was to undermine
Imam, you're doing it again.
A lot of the Wahhabi push,
Barakallahu bikum, jazakum
was
Allah
to undermine Black American Islam. It was to undermine Black American Islam. It was to teach brothers over there. They went to Medina, especially Medina, come back. First thing they do, they making takfir on Sunni Muslims, making takfir on Madhabi, saying blind followers, making takfir on the Wafdi Muhammad community, and they didn't even really bother with the nation. They ain't really go at the nation as much. They're like, okay, boom, Farrakhan could go over to Saudi, and they give him the world treatment. I'm not gonna get to their doctrine, but man, we got to. Black American Muslims have to understand, man, that there are people out to undermine our communities, man. There are Muslims right here in the United States of America that have a distinct hatred for blacks.
Oh, what happened to Imam Amin?
I was probably talking to. They probably on us. They probably on to us now. No, he probably hit his core. He got me right back on. No, but I'm saying that we have to understand that, man, there has been all kinds of, I'm not talking conspiracy theory. I'm talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars putting into promoting a certain narrative of Islam in America. Listen, Black American Muslims used to be 33% of the Muslim population in this country. Now we're 13%, according to the last Pew study, even though Pew studies be skewed and be trying to misplace information. So, but they look at by the year 2050, we can only be like 3-4% of the population of Muslims in America. So we spend so much time arguing over this Wahhabi crap. I mean, I'm saying Saudi Arabian government will come and drop $20 million at University of Penn. You look it up. It's right on the internet. You can look at the chairs they set up at Georgetown, at University of Pennsylvania, Princeton University. They'll drop $20 million, man. 20 million, and there'll be a masjid within 2-3 miles from that university of a black Muslim struggling to pay rent in a little storefront over there, man. And if you even try to get some Saudi money, man, then you got to jump through so many hoops. They have an organization called North American Islamic Trust. Look it up, Nate. Any Saudi supportive master, you want open master, you can go to Nate. They will buy the building for you. They will buy the property for you. They will build that building for you, and you pay them back. They get Saudi financing, man. I don't know about now, but man, they have undermined everything we try to do as Black American Muslims who follow the Sunnah, man. That stuff is documented.
Can I ask you a question, Imam? With that said,
I'm mad now, man.
I want you to be mad. I want you to be mad enough so we can make a change.
You got me hyped up now, man.
Here's my thing, right? Mm-hmm. There's two things that we have to do. So someone asked solutions, and we're past our time, so we got to close in the next 10, 15 minutes. So I'm going to take 3 minutes and give everybody 3 minutes and we out of here, right? Here's what I'm saying. And if we realize all these things, the first thing we got to do is tell our people the truth. A historical truth, uncut, raw truth.
I'm all for that.
No more lying to our people. No more fake identities. A spade is a spade. That's number one. And to do that, we're going to have to take a little pain. Because my friend might be a Wahhabi. My sister might be a Wahhabi. Heck, my mom and dad might be Wahhabis. And I got to have enough love for them to say, Mom, Dad, sister, brother, homie, you're mistaken. This was a plot that was put together in the Islamic world, and it reached us.
Well,
And if
I mean, hey, man, you know, I have paid the price.
I know that, but I'm just giving my closing solution.
Right.
The first solution is we have to tell our people the truth. We have to teach our people the true Islamic tradition with an unbroken chain and let them learn. And we have to say, listen, that's number one. We can't skip the learning part. No microwave Islam. That's number one. Then number two, once we teach them, we have to build them up economically so they can do for themselves, and they don't got to worry about what nobody else is doing for somebody else because they can do for themselves. Education, economics, build your community. That's my solution. Go ahead. Let the young guys go first so you can go.
Go ahead, because I said a lot. I said too much already, man.
Alhamdulillah. Solutions. I think we have to we have to look at it. A lot of times when your enemy attacks you, you have to respect his gangster, so to speak, and see how he attacked you.
Right.
And we can look back on see how they got us, and see how they brainwashed so many of us. Like I mentioned earlier, even if the book wasn't about Akida, they put the Akida in it. They attack the four methods in it. You want to learn, the prayer of the prophet described, as they say, but in the introduction, you're going to get an all-out attack on the methods, right? So we have to do the exact same thing. Number one, we can't be lazy. We have to put out the truth, right? And these videos and all of these things and these Juma khutbahs in our classes in our Masjid are good, but it has to be put in the book form. It has to be put in video. And just one real quick example. I was this is again back living in New York. I was under Imam Siraj. I was one of his assistants and students, and another well-known Imam visited, and he was given a speech, and he was in the middle of his studies. And I asked him a question. I didn't announce who I was or who I connected with. As far as he's concerned, I'm just a brother sitting there in the masjid. And I said, hey, how can we study, where you're studying at? Mind you, I already got accepted to study there and everything. But I just wanted to know from his perspective, since he was already studying there. And he didn't encourage me. He said something under his breath real quick, and then he said, we don't want everybody over there, because we had some riffraff come over there, and they, a lot of our people, made black people look bad over there. So and so he dipped around my answer, and he was Ahl Sunnah. At this time, I was default Wahhabi, so I could have got plugged in, but you see how he blocked me. He didn't ask who I was. The Wahhabis, they're not blocking. If you want to get plugged into their Wahhabi learning, they'll plug you right in. And so Ahl Sunnah got to stop doing that, trying to make something so academic, so high. The only time I'm putting out a book is if it's my PhD thesis. We got to stop that. Yeah. We got to make a common book, big font, glossy cover, just like the Wahhabis do, right? And we have to break it down. You take the smallest mutun, the smallest metin, and a lot of people ain't reading that, but we should at least compose books where they can get what they need until they get their appetite wet and they can go on to higher studies. And so we have to do this with books. If any of our people don't want to stay here, they want to go overseas, we should be plugged into places overseas so the process is streamlined. So just like it was with them, it's streamlined. And I got a lot to say, but I'll probably remember as soon as one of y'all start talking. So I'll stop there.
Sure, man, Faheem.
MashaAllah, it's been a very enlightening conversation. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, but solutions, we really just working on the awam, it's just really disheartening how many people are so displaced with this default Wahhabism, and sometimes it takes a lot of energy and effort to, deprogram people, but it got to be done. We got to tell the raw truth. We got to reprogram people. We got to redirect them and put them in a direction that they need to go in. And as they say, it takes 20 years for an overnight success.
Wow.
It takes 20 years for an overnight success. So we're going to be working for the next 20 years or so to start to see this thing subside and really concentrate on our people, inshallah ta'ala, and making sure that, we give them the love, the empowerment, and, the guidance that's necessary for them. As the brother said in the comments, the Wahhabi Rehab Center. Yeah, because we got a lot of people got a detox, man. That really, Imam, you hit it on the head with that default Wahhabism, because people won't even know. They're talking about, three categories of Tawheed, and they don't know that's default Wahhabism. They talk about scholars of Hadith, and they don't know that's default Wahhabism. Certain scholars are saying that this is the greatest Hadith scholar of this time, or, they talk about Saudi Arabian scholarship, and they don't know that's default Wahhabism. And when we talk about Wahhabism itself, they don't want to accept that it has a very sordid history, And, those glossy books that they read about all this, purifying the lands from shirk. And these were Muslims. These are people that said, La ilaha illallah. And somebody's coming saying that there's no difference between a person who utters the Shahada and one who is a disbeliever, except in worship. Come on. And that's going to take a lot of work, because especially in our areas, we still got so much. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq, and just going to keep chipping at it, inshallah.
Imam,
Yes.
your turn.
Let me just say this. I'm going to take 4 minutes, inshallah ta'ala. First point I want to make is about the new madhab thing, okay? When Imam Wafi Muhammad came back out, and this was back in the early 1990s, that he wanted to start a new madhab for Americans, right? And I was never part of that community. I was always the sunnah that I'm on right now. This is what I was born on. I wrote an article about that appeared in Huda magazine. I think it was on the front page, Huda magazine. I don't know if they still publish Huda magazine, but my point was that there shouldn't be any new madhab in America until you've exhausted the old madhab, because there's still things that we just don't know. People just don't know this. The scholars have covered pretty much everything. But I was looking at a comment, and they might have misheard me. I don't think we need a new madhab, but I think you need new fiqh. The reason why you need new fiqh is because you always need new fiqh. Anytime a situation changes, there is new fiqh. If you're sitting in the country, if you're sitting in your city and you're stationary, the fiqh is one thing. But when you start traveling, the fiqh changes. If you travel and get sick, the fiqh changes again. If you travel and want to get married, the fiqh is going to change then about your housing situation. If you travel and go to war, the fiqh is going to change. Fiqh always changes, whether you're Shafi or whatever madhab you are. Fiqh changes when conditions change. America is a new condition, and even though I'm Shafi, but some things in madhab, there's always been upgrades to madhab based upon the situation, using the principles of that madhab. That's one thing. Number two is that I sincerely believe, and I wrote about this, I've been writing about this stuff for just a long time, and my position hasn't changed. For Black American Muslims, people need to have imams. And what I'm saying, yes, we follow the 4 imams, but the way that 95% of the world follows the 4 imams, they follow through their local imam. If you go to Syria, your imam, he is a Shafi'i. If you're in Syria, he's a Shafi'i. If you're in Egypt, your imam is a Shafi'i. If you're in Pakistan, unless you're on the coast, your imam is a Hanafi. He's going to be a Hanafi. So when you follow that imam in your local area, or there's a local jurisprudence, you're going to follow Hanafi fiqh. So I don't think, so without having imams of masajid and of communities and critical mass of people, we as Black American Muslims will always operate as individual mobs. Now, Imam Naeem, what you said really kind of opened my eyes. I did not look at it that way about the default Wahhabism. I didn't even think about that. I understand that they took over the bookstores. I couldn't even get my book in any of their bookstores. Any of them. What? No, you can't, And not that it's no great book, but it does go step by step, deal with Wahhabi, I call it Salafi doctrine in areas where they're wrong. But I stopped short of going out and cursing Salafi because I don't curse Muslims. Man, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna curse no individual. I don't do it. But for Black American Muslims, and this is my position on this, unless you have communities within the Imam, within the Amir, some sort of governance about marriage, divorce, about a personal relationship that people have, the settling disputes, man, you're just going to have a lot of individual one-on-one Muslims, man, who just have their opinions, who ain't going to do crap unless people have a bay'ah or have some kind of membership. Man, listen, they're just talking smack, man, because Islam work because that is from the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. That's why they call Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It's you have an Imam, you have an Amir, you have Bay'ah, you have Zakat collection, you have some kind of administrative situation. Now we have people just out there, individual Muslim sisters, just there by yourself. Men by themselves, women by themselves. You can't do nothing with that. All that's going to happen. In fact, Imam, I mean, you mentioned that hadith. Or you mentioned hadith about Jama'ah, but the Prophet said, "Alayka bi jama'ati, fa innama ya'kulu dhi'bu al-ghanam al-qasi." I enjoy you being congregation because the wolf devours the stray sheep, and all I'm seeing is an individual Muslim get knocked off. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Get knocked off, knocked out the deen, knocked your families all jacked up now. Your kids in left Islam, your kids in turn lesbo or turn homo. I mean, this is happening all over the country. When you don't have a community, man. I did we get to this thing about the imams, you know, ain't no such thing as no perfect imam. Ain't no such thing as about no perfect imam. Ain't got no that's bull. That's the Hollywood stuff. So for me, the whole theological argument, that's the realm of scholars, you know, and they're writing book. And because you don't have these communities, another thing you don't have resources, man. You don't have money. Listen, Saudi Arabia pumped billions. I'm talking about billions of dollars, man. Hundreds of billions of dollars over the last 20 years into hundreds of billions of dollars, man, in these books. That's why they're so glossy, so slick looking. Oh, look at this drawing. It be the same book. They take a little Kitab here. I don't know how they do it. They make that drawing to a big thick drawing. Kitab here is like a little tiny booklet. Yes, Idris. Okay, wait, I'm almost done. So unless we find ways to empower our imams, because we don't have money, man. We don't have money to write books. I could sit and write books all day long if I had some kind of funding. These people get academic funding, man. They get okay. Here, I'm going to give you $20,000. Listen, in Georgetown, what's that dude who's the head of the Islamic study in Georgetown? That white dude, John Esposito. Man, they dropped $20 million on him. Look it up. $20 million for him to head a chair of Islamic studies at Georgetown University. $20 million, man. That means you can sit down, man, and you can take care of your family, and you can just write. And they have that. So we're fighting with toothpicks, man. And the closest we can come to is at least have community jama'ah of people, especially activist imams. You know, and so I'm at a point right now. If you ain't committed, if you ain't putting yourself on the line, you ain't got no bay'ah, man. Listen, man, you just talking. You just talking because listen, we're headed towards extinction. I'm gonna leave it at that shit. And,
I think what I just want to share something with you, right? So sometimes there's always going to be people that may disagree with what we're doing. Right? But listen what I'm saying, right? But we've had, throughout this thing, over 100 people who have maintained and stayed listening to all this for 2 hours and 14 minutes.
Wow. Really?
So that means we're getting somebody's attention. They're listening. Some's going to take some things, some's going to take others. What we are doing is we're having the conversation, and that's a start.
Right.
So, inshallah.
And people need to know that we brothers.
Of course.
We talking stuff,
They
But
can
for
tell
real,
that.
behind closed there, you know what I mean? That's my nigga right there. I mean, that's my man right there.
See, they're gonna
That's
start
my
talking
man.
about you.
No, behind closed doors, that's my man right there. For real, for real. And man, I am too. But this boy right here, that's my. We may talk stuff, don't get it twisted, man. That's my boy. I'm gonna go to bat for that boy right there. Seriously.
And y'all know I love y'all brothers. It's not words, y'all know
I
actions.
mean, say nigga. I mean,
All of you know it. I've been a brother to all of y'all from my heart in every way I can. I love you, brothers. You know what I mean? And that
And we love you too, man.
We're in a different type of
We
world.
love you too.
Love like brotherly love, right?
Yeah. Pause.
I just don't want nobody to go home at the end of the day and see, oh, they don't agree, blah, blah, blah. It ain't like that, bro.
Nah, we brothers. I think everyone, and what we did do is we showed people how to do such thing and still be brothers and still love one another. So inshallah, next week, we got to go find the next topic that we got to talk about because this is one issue in our community. I think next week, we may to start coming up with some ways that, we can build, financial stability in our communities and some of these solutions, how we going to do it, right? We got to come up with these ways because the people, they're listening. Now we got to come up with a program to get them involved and to let them see what we're talking about in practical. So next week, inshallah, we can talk about economics and community building. Can we think that's a good one to go on?
Yeah.
I think that economics.
So you got all week to come up with some stuff, look at some models. Let's see what we can do in our communities and let's give some things out.
Inshallah ta'ala.
All right. I love y'all. Imam, close us out. It's your show. You the elder here.
ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات وألف بين قلوبنا واجعل في قلوبنا الإيمان والحكمة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين ونصلي ونسلم ونبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
Inshallah, I'll see y'all next week. Hey, Imam, call me so I can let you know these books in the morning, like around 9 o'clock. I got your books. I just don't know which to send. You got to tell me. Just call me.
Okay.
All right. Barakallahu bikum. Assalamu alaikum.